And good evening, and once again, welcome to another edition of the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly, and it's Monday night. And, that means, that's right, it's time for new comics, bitches! And we don't have a lot to go through this week. Some things I might end up kind of skimming over just because I wasn't too huge of a fan of them. And some things are more important that I do, of course, want to expound about. So this may end up being shorter than average, or it may just end up being kind of regular length. Just thinking if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about before I get into this. Okay, first of all, of course, thank you to all of you who watched the second anniversary vlog. I hope you liked the little tour around Casa de Donnelly. Of course, it wasn't as well lit as I would have liked. Thank you, Mark. But yes. That's a special thing that I want to do for you guys, and just so you know, no one has guessed the right answer yet to the quiz that I presented before, which is who is the Avengers figure that I have. Now, as I said, unfortunately this is only open to my continental United States followers. But as soon as someone does guess the right answer, whether it's there or here, of course you have to go back to watch that one if you haven't yet, and comment. You can either comment here or there, doesn't matter. And like I said, whoever gets it right will get it. And if this goes into more than, say, this or maybe next week's vlog, then I will start allowing people who guessed before to make a second guess. If you don't get it. Now again, this is one of the Avengers figures. It could be any character from the film that has a figure. So, you can go to, I think, cmdstore.com. You can take a look at the figures, and you can try and guess based on all of the characters, all of the figures that are there, as to who it might be. And like I said, I will send the first, to whoever guesses the first one, who is in the continental U.S., I will send that. Figure out to them. So if you have any friends that aren't watching, maybe tell them to watch. They might pick up some nice swag. Of course, I'm always trying to recruit new followers, so it's always nice to have new people that watch or listen. Of course, if you're listening on iTunes, hello out there. So let's shove on, shall we? So we're going to start with this week's only new #1 from Marvel Now, which I only picked up because they, digital download codes, can't beat them. And that was Avengers Arena #1. I know what you're thinking. I won't be picking this book up, but I will be reading it as long as it's free. Although I don't know if the person that I get my digital download codes from will keep reading this, because he didn't think very highly of it. I didn't think terribly highly of it either, but it was better than I expected. But to tell you the truth, I expected nothing. I didn't expect this to be good at all, but I was surprised that actually they tell a pretty good story here. Now, basically what we have here, it's, as I'm sure you already know, we've got some members of the Young Avengers, like, for instance, Hazmat, Metal, Reptile, however he pronounces his name. We've got some Runaways. We've got Nico and Chase. We've got X-23 is there, and a bunch of other, like Kid Darkhawk and some other people like Kid Britain, and just a lot of people that I don't know. I don't know what titles they're from. I don't know if they're from Secret Warriors. I don't know where they're from. But anyway, they're all teleported to a very souped-up arcade's new murder world. And of course, this is basically, it's, whatever you want to call it, battle royale, it's Hunger Games. I kind of call it Battle Royale with cheese. Because that's really kind of what this is. It's a hackneyed idea, of course. It's very, 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 very derivative. But it gives an interesting it gives an interesting place to have this sort of confrontation, because instead of other people volunteering or what have you, of course they're forced into it because Arcade has these ginormous superpowers now. I mean, he rises out of a volcano, essentially, covered in like this force field, and he's punching people like half a mile and stuff like that. I mean, it's just insane what he can do now. So however he got souped up, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know. I don't know if I'll ever know, because I don't know how long this book will actually hold my interest. But for right now, it does kind of have my interest, because we do have, it opens interestingly enough at, at the Young Avengers compound, and we see that, now I don't know if this happened in Young Avengers, but we see Hazmat and Metal, because Metal, of course, is the only one that can be around Hazmat when she is out of her suit. And they are in a post-coital embrace. So this is, I think, what I'm understanding is that it's her first time, possibly his. And then, of course, they're whisked away. And then we get to this moment of Arcade introducing himself. Of course, it starts out with, Hazmat, her suit's already cracked, and X-23 is after her, ready to just gut her. And we see why, because she's commenting on her potential death, that it might not be that bad, because ultimately the first casualty of this, because nobody is, volunteering, of course, and no one is really, but they're trying to stand up to him, but of course, that's not working at all. And so we get our first casualty in the form of Metal. He's, Arcade literally just points his fingers like this, and just this blast of energy, and just Metal just explodes. There's nothing, there's nothing left of him except his metallic, exoskeleton or whatever it is. I didn't read that much new Young Avengers, so I'm not too up on that. So I know I've just spoiled something for you, and I'm sorry. I should have given a spoiler alert. But if anybody out there is really reading this title, you probably already read it, and this is not much of a shock. But if you haven't read it yet, I'm sorry that I spoiled that for you. But I'm not going to start from the beginning again to let you know that spoilers may indeed happen, because they normally do here. I try to keep everything pretty much spoiler-free, particularly when it comes to casualties, but this one was just, it's a book I'm not reading. I know that a lot of people out there aren't reading, and don't plan on reading because of the whole kind of Battle Royale ripoff that it is. But Dennis Hopeless and Kev Walker do a pretty good job. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was pretty darn good. I thought it was nicely dramatic. I thought it was well balanced. It was nicely paced. The art's good. So I mean, it was just, you know, there was nothing, certainly nothing offensive about it, and I thought it was decent. So that's what I think. So moving along to Ultimate X-Men number 20. I am starting to worry about this title again, because I know that some of you out there, particularly Ghost Critic, was commenting on that this is starting to feel a little familiar because of Brian Wood's work on DMZ, which is a series, again, I've never read, no idea about DMZ and what it's like, and what it's really... I have an idea of what it's about, but I don't know exactly what goes on in it. So what we have here, of course, is that they're at Utopia, they're trying to fit in, but, you know, we see that Nomi has taken Kitty's gun that Nick Fury has left for her, and is manipulating it, electromagnetically, and pulling it apart and reassembling it, and is basically, we have, basically the beginning of two factions within Utopia that are starting to essentially feel that they're going to go to war with each other for what will ultimately be the fate of mutant kind. But, we have Psylocke, obviously on the Nomi side. She is playing a lot of head games with Rogue. And then Blackheath, the mutant plant guy. He finds basically a way to mutate a seed so that it's basically a super seed. It will grow in any soil on the planet, because if it can grow in basically what's almost an irradiated wasteland, which young Tommy Hudson finds out, there is definitely still a pretty good amount of radioactive residue in this area. Basically, this is something that they need, and it's something that, they realize can change the world. And so they invite the one person that's, the only phone that's there, the only person that the only people they can really call are the government. And who shows up but Tony Stark. Basically Tony Stark says, the understanding is that, they can make billions upon billions of dollars by selling this, super seed. But of course, Kitty wants to just give it away. She wants it to be her gift to the world. Now, Tony, of course, being something of an idealist, but also being a realist, understands that this will be, that he will help them, but that, corporations, countries, whatever, they are going to start raining hell upon Utopia. Because, it's essentially like the water engine. I mean, if you create something that will make an entire industry obsolete, very, very profitable industries, then they are going to try to stop it, and they will do whatever they can. So, of course, he's brought along the new Iron Patriot armor to help protect them, but of course the threat within the camp itself is still growing. We still don't know what's going on with Karen Grant in the Seer, because we don't go back to that. That was another problem I had. I'm still wondering what the fuck Colossus is doing. All these characters that they introduced during, all these other X-Men that they introduced during Nick Spencer's run have kind of, vanished from the scene. There's no Havoc. There's no Colossus anymore. But we still have, we have Storm, we have Kitty, we have Jimmy, we have Rogue, we have Bobby, but that's it. So it was just, to me it was just like, where the fuck is everybody? The real problem that I had, aside from this issue being just really kind of reinforcing how the discord that's going on within the camp, is that, and that's, it takes up too much time. you want more momentum with a tale like this. Because it was just, you know, I mean, Brian Wood really brought this book out of kind of its slog that Nick Spencer, unfortunately, had put it in, and now we're kind of, this issue just felt like it was starting to slog again. And that's really what it was. It's very poorly paced. It doesn't really have anything new to present or to say, other than, like I said, like the fracturing within the mutants in Utopia. And of course, you know, this appearance of this MacGuffin, this magic, you know, this magic seed, if you will. But the other thing that I really, really, really did not like was Carlo Barbieri's art. It was, I felt that the women were way, way, way too sexualized. You know, everybody's, you know, they're wearing bikinis, and I understand it's the desert and it's hot and everything like that, but they're wearing bikinis, they're running in, you know, like, you know, really tight, like half tees and stuff like that when they're exercising, and, you know, I mean, they've got, you know, very inappropriate breast sizes for, you know, their age group. I mean, because they're only still teenagers, right? And they all seem, you know, all the women seem to have the same breast size, which is, you know, like a D. So, I mean, that to me, it felt dirty. It felt wrong. And that was a really big problem that I had with it. I mean, aside from that, I just wasn't that impressed with this issue. I am impressed, though, with the new idea that it did introduce, but aside from that, it really just seemed to tread water. And so this was, at best, a 3 out of 5. I give it more of a benefit of a doubt maybe than I normally would have, because I think that Wood has a greater plan at work here that isn't just going to be kind of more DMZ-ish stuff. You know, this would normally be maybe like a 2 or 2.5 out of 5. But like I said, I'm willing to give this book the benefit of the doubt. That brings us to a really good book, and that is Winter Soldier, number 13. So this is the penultimate issue of the Widow Hunt saga. I don't know if this is Brubaker's second to last issue. I don't know if he was leaving at 14 or 15. I think it's 15, but I might be wrong. So I'm sure that there are plenty of you out there that are willing to correct me on that. But anyway, so we have one hell of a face-off, which, you know, because as we left with the last issue, we saw that the person, you know, because essentially Bucky had uploaded this mission that Leo had left for him, this assassination mission in which he has to become essentially the old Winter Soldier, and that mission was to kill Daredevil. Now, why Daredevil? You know, so that's one of the questions that you kind of left off with in the last issues. Like, why is he going after Daredevil? That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. What does Daredevil have to do with anything? And so we have this kind of serious, you know, verses with, and we don't know who the internal monologue belongs to, of course, until he arrives. And it's, you know, because we have, you know, Hawkeye and Wolverine and Daredevil and Winter Soldier all facing off, you know, I mean, well, you know, the three of them against Bucky. And I mean, obviously, it's always nice when Brubaker works with characters that he's worked with on their own books. For instance, obviously, Brubaker wrote what I would say is probably, you know, one of the best runs of Daredevil, perhaps of all time, even though comparatively to people like Bendis or Miller, it was pretty short. You know, Wade and Miller and Bendis are all kind of duking it out for the top spot. I would defer probably to Miller's work more than Wade's at this point, but Wade is, I think, it's not a distant second place, but it's definitely second. So this, I would say that Brubaker's probably third. But anyway, because he's so familiar with the character, he knows his voice, which we don't hear a lot of, but we know his voice. We know that, you know, he Brubaker knows how to make him very fluid, and, you know, in his movements and in his combat strategy and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden we find out who the inner monologue belongs to, and that's Cap, because Cap sees that these other guys, they're holding back. They're holding back from hurting Bucky because they know that Bucky is really still in there. But, you know, of course, with this reprogramming, he's all Winter Soldiery again. And Cap comes down and just bang, you know, he just lays Bucky the fuck out, because, you know, he is not holding back, because he knows how dangerous Bucky can be as the Winter Soldier, and he knows that if he ends up doing anything really awful, that it will just be even worse if he can't take a good blow or two. So, of course, you know, they get him back to S.H.I.E.L.D., they deprogram him, and then they wonder what the fuck was going through his mind when he decided to do something like that. Because, as Cap, you know, points out, after there's a little bit of a hullabaloo with, you know, as Logan smacks Bucky around for doing something so stupid, because obviously Logan's been there. He knows what it's like to have, you know, his brain poked around inside and turned into something that he didn't want to be. And, you know, he just felt, you know, Bucky says, well, you know, I just felt like if we played by Leo's rules, maybe we would win the game. But, you know, what Cap has realized before anybody else is that Leo is essentially leaving clues by indicating, you know, who the target was going to be. Because Daredevil means nothing to Leo, means nothing to, you know, I shouldn't say means nothing, but, you know, is in the grand scheme of the main players of this book, you know, with Logan and, you know, Clint and Steve and Bucky, he has nothing to do really with any of them. You know, they've never been really partnered up or anything like that. But who is important to someone involved here, and of course it's the Black Widow, who is someone that's important to her, and that of course is Daredevil. So that's why. That's the clue that, you know, Steve, you know, indicates, is that what, you know, Leo is ultimately planning here is to have her come back with the knowledge of, you know, all these things that have happened. So he's essentially sent, you know, Bucky to kill an old lover of Black Widow's, so it would make, you know, when he does return her to form, that she will be hurting, you know, just as much as Bucky would be. So, I mean, it's all a big, you know, it's all a big mind fuck when it comes to Leo, and we kind of start to see some of his final plans come into place and what he intends to do. And it has something to do with the Cap and Bucky monument. You know, when the world believed that they were dead, they were both dead at Arlington National Cemetery. But there's another high-value target within range of Arlington, and they're going for maximum effect. Her and, you know, Leo and Natasha. So the only problem that I have with this book is that it felt short, because we have some incredible action sequences at the beginning, balanced very, very carefully, as really, you know, someone of Brubaker's caliber really knows how to do well, which is to balance, you know, fantastic action and really good character moments. So, I mean, and then, you know, Butch Guice on art, he's doing such a terrific job on making this book really gritty and really dark and really foreboding. So, I mean, it's literally like, you know, we don't know what's going to happen next. You know, and the art, you know, his art style actually enhances that. It enhances the darkness of this book, you know, everything kind of happening within the shadows. I mean, there are other artists that I would prefer to see, but, you know, like Michael Lark, you know, that's one. But, you know, I'm perfectly happy with Butch Guice right now. And that wasn't something I would have said very long ago. I was not a fan of his art really at all, but his art style suits this book very well. So this was absolutely 4.5 out of 5. I just wish it had been a little bit longer, not felt quite so brief of a read. Moving on to Scarlet Spider, number 12. I'm glad that all the minimum carnage bullshit is over with. But unfortunately, Kane isn't. Well, he's glad that it's over with, but but he's definitely kind of wallowing in self-pity, because basically what we have here is, we have Kane's Christmas story. Is that he's taken in all of his friends, with Araceli and the waitress slash singer, or bartender slash singer, and his cop and his doctor friends. They're all kind of living in his penthouse suite, and what is actually being held at that hotel is millions of dollars worth of diamonds. And what happens, since it's Christmas time, all the thieves bust in dressed like Santa. And of course, this very bad news for everybody in there, except for Kane, who is too busy kind of sleeping off his pathetically low tolerance for beer, but also kind of wallowing in this haze of self-pity, saying how he's not a hero, he doesn't deserve this, he just wants to get the hell away from all these people, he doesn't belong with any of them because he cares about them. That's his whole thing, is that he doesn't want any of these people put in harm's way because of who he is and what he does, and ultimately who he is, he feels the only thing that he is a killer. And of course, we know that to be not true, but of course Kane can't see it until he is snapped out of his funk with some quick thinking from our pretty young bartender, to get up to the man in the penthouse suite, who says, they have, has even more money than the diamonds that are in the safe. And of course, this, Kane goes right to work immediately. We find out some things about Kane's costume as well, that it's actually self-repairing, which I thought was neat, as Araceli kind of explains. And we see Araceli having some really nice moments, some fun with her telepathy, or empath ability. You can't really tell what it's telepathy. But it seems to be more empathic in nature. She has some fun with one of the robbers, and of course, there's some really nice moments. There's of course the big melee in which Scarlet Spider lays the smack on everybody, it's just, there's some just really kind of fun, strange but fun moments in this book all throughout, peppered throughout the whole book. There's a lot of nice dialogue touches by Chris Yost, and this book was a hell of a lot of fun. I wasn't too crazy about Riley Brown's art. Seemed a little bit too cartoony sometimes. I'd much rather see Ryan Stegman back on this, but I know that he's going to be working on other stuff with Marvel now. I think he's going to be one of the artists on Superior Spider-Man, which apparently has leaked online. I think I read something that the Pirate Bay had a leaked copy of it, but it's like really shitty. It's like a really shitty copy. So I don't know, but they talked about like it's already being sold on eBay and so on and so forth. So I don't know how that came out, but whatever. It's beside the point. Main point here, as far as Scarlet Spider is concerned, is that this was a really fun issue. I enjoyed it a lot. This was a solid 4 out of 5 for Scarlet Spider. And again, it's just one of those books that, for the most part, has been really entertaining. It's just obviously with all the the Carnage shit, I just had no interest in it. It was just too with him and Venom teaming up, it was just too 90s. So I just wanted to skip that altogether. So moving on to the independents, we have Jennifer Blood, number 20. this is also a series, at least this issue felt like was treading water a little bit too much, but it treaded in a better way than Ultimate X-Men did. Is that there's a lot of exposition here, because what we have here is Jen and the kids are settling into their new home and new identities in this little town in New Mexico, where she's hoping that she can stay off the grid. So she's got, you know, new family, you know, well, not new family, same family, but new identities, new job, new diary. She sees that they've even, you know, while she's writing in the diary, you know, she's wondering why she's even writing it in the first place, because this obviously was not to her benefit before, when Andy found out about the diary. And and then we have, you know, we see, you know, just these little snippets that Al Ewing threw in, you know, with you know, this pseudo Lifetime channel has already created a movie based on Jennifer Blood, and, you know, it's just, you know, you hear parts of it in the snippets of the dialogue of the commercial in the background. Of course, it's ridiculous. It is very kind of Lifetime-esque, and that's kind of fun. And when anybody makes fun of Lifetime, it's always good humor to me, especially when they do it well, and that was done well. But, you know, we see her trying to be kind of very ordinary, not, you know, attract any attention. She's working in a bar, and, you know, of course, small town, you know, everybody seems to be somewhat friendly, but also on the other side, we have Pruitt, who has, you know, basically checked herself out of the hospital to get away from the internal affairs investigation, so on and so forth, and she's basically teamed up with her old drug dealer buddy to basically help, you know, help her take Jennifer Blood down, and for good. She's not talking about bringing her in or anything like that. This is definitely someone who's out. This is a hunting party, and she doesn't expect to leave with anything but her dead body. So that was kind of an interesting twist for Pruitt's character. And then we have, you know, a lot of exposition as to how Jen has settled into this this community. You know, finding, you know, kind of how she plans everything in advance. How she is very strategically minded. You know, she even manipulates the nice old lady who has rented her the apartment to help look after the kids, and so on and so on and so forth. You know, so she is a very strategic thinker when she's got her sanity hat on. But, you know, of course, obviously that was lost over the last couple issues. And, you know, we have the Ninjettes, a much more apparently, you know, a much more competent team, are on their way to kind of, you know, take her out, you know, as, you know, with Ray Buick and everything like that. But, you know, you have the kind of what I call the Mike Ehrmantraut character, you know, my throwback to Breaking Bad. And how he has, you know, he's really feeling bad again about having them, you know, sending these guys after Jen to basically take her out, because, you know, he's only interested in the kids' welfare, but at the same time, you know, he has all of these visions, these you know, these hilariously cartoony visions in his head of how he thinks it's going to go down. So it's like, oh fuck, I gotta go do it myself. And then, you know, there's a bit of a kind of a bar brawl that kind of gets started. You know, there's some you know, some trash talk that leads to some, you know, threats of physical violence, particularly against a woman. Jen, who of course is working there at the time, smashes a bottle and just points it at him and says, out. And we have, you know, Jen's son sneak away to find the drunkard town sheriff. And here's where we're really getting into kind of like Preacher-esque territory here. You know, the small town, everything like that, and, you know, you have this sheriff. It's beginning to feel a little bit like Salvation from Preacher. So, I mean, not to that extent, the extent of the absurdity, that was created in Salvation during that run and during that arc in Preacher. But you know, there's little tidbits that I just kind of saw. There's a lot of muted colors and everything like that, which just really made me think of Salvation. So it wasn't great, but it was good. It was good enough. I mean, it's a 3.5 out of 5. Like I said, I do like how descriptive Ewing gets, but again, this is a really exposition-heavy book. There's a lot of talk. Very dense in its dialogue, but not to really introduce us to a whole lot of new ideas, but rather, you know, plot advancement exposition. So sometimes that could be problematic if it's not mixed properly. So the pacing's, you know, obviously obviously off. But all in all, I was a fan of this issue. It's, like I said, 3.5 out of 5 for Jennifer Blood number 20. This leads us to Valiant and Bloodshot number 6. The name of the game here in this issue is high-tech action. It's basically, we have this, you know, this group of kind of semi-sentient, you know, kind of almost hive mind beings called Chainsaw that are in the PRS, Project Rising Spirit compound that Bloodshot and Kara and Burst have broken into. Is her name Burst? Damn it, I forgot again already. But anyway, so, you know, we have our little EMP chick and Kara, and she's broken her way out, you know, with the help of, you know, the kind of the child voice that's in Bloodshot's head. And he's, you know, kind of taking a pounding from this group, but he eventually outfights them, of course, with the help of Kara. She takes down the guy who's essentially kind of controlling them. He's got all of these, you know, he's just sitting in this chair, and all these tubes are, you know, put into him and everything like that. And, you know, she just starts yanking them all out. And, you know, of course, they kind of go down, and, you know, there's a very creative kill. You know, there's a couple of really creative kills here that Swarzynski puts in with, you know, he uses, liquid nitrogen to take one of the guys down, and, you know, breaks his hands and arms off and everything like that. And then, then another one, you know, the kind of recon one, you know, grabs him, snaps his arm, the fucking bone is sticking out of Bloodshot's skin, and he actually uses the, you know, the jagged bone and puts it right through the guy's throat. So that was a particularly nice touch there. This book is nothing else of having some really creative kills. But you know, we do eventually, you know, we have our friendly EMP chick meeting up with this Gamma character again. You know, of course, bringing back a lot of really terrifying memories for her. And then Bloodshot, you know, what all he's trying to do is to find out who he really is at this point in time. But of course, what we have here is he has run smack dab into the quote-unquote nursery in which all these children are being held, but apparently they don't like Bloodshot very much. So he's got some serious shit that's about to happen to him. So it's this book was, you know, it's a really, you know, it's a really fun, good, you know, high-tech action book. You know, it's nice, it's nicely, you know, kind of, you know, future tech, not too sci-fi in the sense of, you know, kind of going into big ideas of sci-fi. It's just kind of honing in on the small ideas of sci-fi, and, you know, sci-fi action. So it's a really fun book. This was a really good read. 4 out of 5, very solid for Bloodshot number 6. Now on to a Valiant book, which sadly I did not like very much, and that is Archer and Armstrong number 5. This whole book, you know, is basically one of the big draws for me to this book is kind of, you know, Fred Van Lente's trademark sense of humor. Is that he brings a lot of humor to each issue, despite the fact, however heavy things might get, there's still a lot of good humor to be had. But here we have this whole thing about his brother Gilad, who is also immortal, is he is after young Archer, young Obi, because his family was the cause of the last Geomancer's death. So what they need to do is they need to find the new Geomancer so they can get Gilad off of their ass. But he's someone who just will not stop. He's a machine. He's an immortal machine, and he will not stop until he feels that the blood debt owed to the Geomancer that died accidentally in the previous issue is avenged. So this book, it just gets a little too bogged down in seriousness sometimes, or I should say really bogged down in like some of the action and some of the seriousness, and it loses kind of that, kind of self-referential, kind of fun and ironic edge that it has to it. And so this issue just did not work very well for me. And it had, a different artist, and I can't remember the name of the artist who was doing it before, but he was really good. And this art was just kind of meh. So I mean, the whole book was just a big kind of meh. It's like I care what happens to Archer and Armstrong, but at the same time, I need, I need that injection of, I need this book to stay consistent with its storytelling. Because that's, like I said, when you have a book this young, it's important to kind of stay on that track to maintain your audience. So this, to me, I felt was just the tone was wrong for this book. So this was a 2.5 out of 5 for me. I just didn't really get that much into it. So now on to DC. And got a couple books to talk about there, obviously, and we'll get to those in a moment. But the other big DC release for this week that for me was important was Demon Knights number 15. Now this is, if memory serves, again, this is Paul Cornell's final issue of this book, and he does, and if it is, he does really bring it out with a bang. Is that it's basically, it is, it's the armies of hell versus, the sorcerers of Alba Sarum, and, well, not of Alba Sarum, but, the questing queen and, and her party, and, Lucifer is there and Etrigan is there, while Jason Blood is, with the rest of the quote-unquote knights. And then, the armies of Avalon and the armies of King Arthur and Merlin, they're all, fighting each other. Everybody's fighting. It's just this epic fucking melee, and it's really, really fun. It's a big book. It's a grand scale book, fighting in Avalon, and kind of, how Algebir kind of pitches in to really help amongst all these magical beings that he doesn't, he feels that, his technology will bring something to bear, and of course it does, but it's dashed with a little bit of Merlin magic. So it's, we finally, once the smoke clears, of course, good has prevailed over evil, even, and this is after also King Arthur has used Excalibur to hack off one of Lucifer's hands. And he just kind of leaves saying, yeah, I'll grow another. You can keep it. As a souvenir. So it was just one of those, neat little moments that Cornell had created for Lucifer. So I mean, just this whole issue, and of course, meeting King Arthur, I'm assuming for the first, well, not for the first time, but for Suryasten, for Shining Knight. She is finally knighted by King Arthur himself. To carry on the tradition of the court of King Arthur's knights, you know, the round table, as it were, and the you know, and Jason Blood and Etrigan are merged again by Merlin, because, you know, despite however bad it might be for Jason Blood, you know, they need each other. There's an equilibrium that they both have to have in order to survive. But then the group then talks about splitting up. That they're going to basically, you know, after this, they're going to go their own separate ways. And of course, that is kind of where the book leaves off. Is that, you know, the folly, you know, basically the horsewoman, you know, kind of walking away from this whole scene. You know, it's the folly of men that they forget. You know, because obviously she knows what a good team they make together, and for them to, again, kind of go their separate ways would be a mistake. And we have, you know, Exoristos kind of making up for her kind of selfish desires, and, you know, we see kind of this nice bonding moment between her and Ystin, and you know, so this was a really, 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 you know, so like I said, if this is Cornell's ending, which I'm pretty sure that it is, this is a terrific ending for his run. It's a really appropriate ending for his stuff. Bernard Chang's art is terrific. Just a very, very strong book. 4.5 out of 5 for Demon Knights number 15. So again, if this is your final issue, Paul, good night. It was a pretty damn good run. I'm gonna miss you again, because, you know, the last thing that Paul Cornell did that I really loved, which I've talked about ad nauseum, was Captain Britain and MI-13, and I was so pissed off when that book got pulled. And that was only, I think that was like a 14-issue run. So this, because even Cornell himself tweeted that this was the longest run that he's ever done on a single comic, so I'll miss him on this book, and I don't know who's stepping in next, but I don't know, I'm sure I'll continue to pick it up at least for a little while. But anyway, so that brings us to our books of the week, the books that everybody's talking about. And the first one that I'm going to talk about as a book of the week is not because it's so good, but because it's so unbelievably fucking awful. And it's a book that I almost forgot about, because I actually didn't even look at it after the first time that I looked at it. I literally just remembered it, and that I have to talk about it. And that, of course, is Amazing Spider-Man 699.1. You know me, and you know how I've been talking about how great the last couple issues of Amazing Spider-Man have been. It's really an awakening, you know, and just tremendously suspenseful for the future of the Spider-Man book and what's coming next. We all know that it's not going to be Peter Parker, but we don't know who it's going to be unless you have, you know, stumbled across some of those spoilers. But this whole book is basically one long ad for the upcoming Morbius the Living Vampire series, because that's all it is. It's an origin story. It's the origin story of Morbius told again. And it's just, it's so unnecessary to put here, other than it hyping the next, you know, this new series that's going to be coming out whenever. I mean, first of all, this series, you know, Morbius is not going to last. If it lasts more than 12 issues, I will be really fucking shocked, because nobody gives a shit about Morbius. Nobody cares to see him in his own series. The tortured soul, I must drink blood because of all this fucked up shit going on in my body. I don't care. Nobody cares, okay? Marvel needs, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking when they decided to give Morbius his own book. I mean, it's, you know, that's, you know, it'd kind of be like, you know, it's something akin to kind of giving Blade his own book at this point in time. Blade's a pretty cool character, and I would probably read at least 1 or 2 issues of that book, but nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. I mean, come on. I mean, this is, you know, it's a lame-o 70s character who was who's been kind of made lamer throughout the years. And it's just like, who gives a shit, man? I mean, this was just, it was so awful. The art's terrible, the writing's awful. I mean, this was absolutely maybe a 0.5 out of 5. This was an abysmal book. There is no excuse for it. There is no excuse for putting an Amazing Spider-Man, a title with the name Amazing Spider-Man on it, and having it be a Morbius-centric book when we are literally 1 issue away from 700. There is no fucking excuse for it. You know, it's like if they decided to make a standalone for Alpha, you know, which it's a series that I am looking forward to because Josh Fialkoff's going to be writing it. But at the same time, I don't give a fucking rat's ass about Morbius. Nobody that I've read gives a rat's ass about Morbius. So literally, it's just one of those things that just stymies me. What the fuck is Marvel thinking by giving this character his own book? Like I said, if it lasts beyond 10 issues, it will be a fucking... If it lasts beyond 12 issues, it'll be a fucking miracle. And maybe I'll start to believe in Santa again. But other than that, just garbage. I mean, if I had a physical copy of this book, I literally would have torn it to shreds, because it's just an awful, awful book. But let's turn things around and get to the great stuff. And they're all have something to do with the Batman. Not the devil, that's the devil. But the death of the family. Epic. I'm going to start first with my first runner-up, which is BATGIRL number 15. This is the best issue of this book that has come down yet. It is absolutely a must-read. Even if you haven't been picking up BATGIRL, this is something that literally, if you follow Gail Simone on Twitter or on Facebook, you see her write. There's a scene that she wrote in this book that she's wanted to write for 10 years. And we finally get to see that and the impact of it. But let's slow down for a minute and let's talk about what is happening, of course. And that is, in the last issue, we had this very, very horrific moment in which the Joker asked Batgirl to be her bride. And to be his bride, excuse me. That they should be wed. All this, of course, with, her still holding the elder Barbara Gordon hostage. It's interesting that both mother and son characters have the same names for the younger versions of themselves. You have the adult Barbara and the daughter Barbara and the adult James and the son James. So what we have here is he has the Joker still in the in the roller rink and he's But, what starts, actually, with this really dark intro of, prior to everything that's gone on in this book. We don't know how far back this goes, but it's a new female psychiatrist has been brought in to start talking with the Joker, and he gives her kind of his diary. And there's all this very creepy shit in it, and of course there's even a threat against the psychiatrist's child. So when we see bits and pieces here into Joker's mind and how far ahead he thinks, and how does he get this information? It's like, how is he able to be this thing? And this like super psychopath. that, you know, there's nothing super powered about him, but there's just somehow he is able to get this information and use it. And, you know, he has people on the outside. We know that. How he gets messages to them from Arkham Asylum, we don't know. Arkham Asylum at this point, you know, they might as well just tear the fucking place down because it's a revolving door. But, you know, Batman doesn't kill. Won't kill. That is his creed. That is what he lives by. That is his sense of justice. But this is not Batman in this book. It's Batgirl. And we know what the Joker has done to Batgirl. And not only what has been done to her before, but what's being done to her now. Not only has this, you know, has Barbara Gordon been paralyzed by the Joker, but also her mother is at risk. And he's cut off one of her fingers. And, you know, so he's going around the rink, kind of expounding on his ideas of marriage. And Gail Simone writes crazy people like nobody's fucking business. It is really astonishing how twisted this issue is. But once Barbara, Babs, whatever, Batgirl finds her opening, she absolutely takes advantage of it. And she is on Joker like white on rice. And this is the scene that I know that Gail Simone has always wanted to write, in which she has basically made the decision to kill him. Maybe not kill him, but at the very least, to paralyze him. And so he, you know, she is beating the living crap out of him, and she's hitting him in the, you know, in the kidneys and, you know, other parts of the body, and then of course, you know, and then it's like this is your spine, bam. And she's, you know, she gets him on the ground, he's on his stomach, and she's stepping on his spine, you know, kicking it. And then she grabs one of the guns and holds it, and she's thinking to herself, you know, we see her internal monologue. She said, this would be worth it. It would be worth the shame, the guilt, the jail time, everything that I'll feel after this. If I can just do this, it would be worth it. Of course, bang! Not Batgirl, but one of the snipers outside. And basically, you know, Joker's like, hey, you know, it's time to get our, you know, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. And, you know, so, Joker basically makes his part of his, you know, his next part of his plan known is that, you know, if she basically continues to beat up on him and doesn't get the hell out of there, you know, Mama Gordon is going to get seriously dead. Of course, you know, then Barbara looks around at everybody else who was just seemed to kind of be kind of almost frozen in place, but now they're all dead because the Joker has, you know, the venom, you know, his Joker toxin has completely taken effect, and all the other innocent people have died. And so what we have here is then we cut to outside, and Barbara has fled the scene so that she can prepare for the next part of the ceremony, which is to get hitched. And we see James Jr. is being called by Alicia and is being requested that he come and get her because, you know, she doesn't know what's going on with Barbara, but she knows there's something bad. She's really scared. Of course, James is the only friendly shoulder, apparently, to her that she can go to cry on. And James has kind of a change of mind. Not a change of heart, because it's hard to say that if he even has one, but he calls Joker and basically says to let the women go. Both Barbaras. He wants him to let her go. So now we know that the next issue of Simone's run on Batgirl will be the final issue that she does of this book. I know that a lot of people are talking about, you know, basically boycotting, you know, any future work on Batgirl that isn't by Gail Simone. Like I said, I'm not worried about Gail Simone. She will find work elsewhere on some other titles. She is not exclusive to DC, as I believe that she was. So I'm sure that she's going to be doing something else, probably for Marvel, maybe for Image or Dark Horse or something like that, hopefully very soon. But for right now, I'm just really waiting on leaving Megalopolis. But this was just a fantastic story. I mean, the character work, the art, unfortunately not by Ed Benes. I can't remember who exactly did it. But it was just, you know, the whole book just coalesced very, very, very well. You know, I won't say infinitely better than anything that she's done previously on this book, but this is the first Batgirl issue that I can say is truly 5 out of 5. This was a fantastic, fantastic read. And like I said, those moments in which Batgirl is kicking Joker's ass and really ruminating about, you know, basically she's throwing morality out the window, you know, she's realized she is not Batman. She does not have to live by Batman's set of rules. Even if it means, you know, being kind of excommunicated from the Bat family, it will be worth it if she can do what she needs, what she feels that she must do. So I mean, that was, you know, a big part of, you know, what this Batgirl and what her conflict with the Joker had to come to a head of that sort, is that something needs to happen to him by her. Whether or not it will, hard to say, but just fantastic issue. Cannot say enough good things about it. But above that, this was a hard pick, because both of these issues are extremely well done. But ultimately, I have to go with the runner-up being Batman and Robin, number 15. Because what we have here is a brilliant, horrifically creepy, incredibly scary descent for Damian. Not that he's scared, per se, but we're scared for him. Because we have grown to like Damian. At least I have. I've grown to like him a lot. And what we have here really in this issue, not just the way that Tomasi writes this issue, but Patrick Gleason's art, holy Christ in heaven, is it good. I would say that there's better artwork in this issue than there is in the pick of the week. And that's an almost hard thing to get out of my throat, because there have been some artistic inconsistencies over the past couple issues of Batman and Robin, because you had those jarring switches between artists. But here we have Patrick Gleason doing the whole thing, and I mean, for the amount of detail that he puts into it, because it's like, it'll be strange because, you know, some things will be done in shadow, and so there's almost no detail, and then all of a sudden you have this vibrant detail, because basically what we have here is Damian going against the Joker, using his own detective skills to search where Alfred might have been taken, and to follow the clues, to basically learning from his father, the world's greatest detective, that, you know, there are things that he wants to, you know, that he wants to see what he can do about saving Alfred, because Alfred is very important to him, despite the fact, however much he may berate him, he's part of the family. He's very much part of the Wayne family, despite not having the same name. So, you know, you have this moment in which, you know, of course he's saying, you know, father told me not to do this, but should I do it anyway? And of course he's talking to Titus, the dog, and it's just, you know, there are just sometimes when you've already have your mind made up and you ask an animal and you know that you're going to get the answer that is already in your own mind. And everybody does that. You know, if you've ever had a pet, you've always asked, you know, should I do this? Yeah, I think I should. Or no, maybe I shouldn't. Because you already have your mind made up. But, so of course he, you know, uses his detective skills on, you know, around the Wayne Manor grounds. He finds some, what I can only assume to be urine from a particular species of animal, which of course is a hyena. And where do they keep hyenas? At the Gotham Zoo. So he goes there and he sees the hyenas eating another human being. And of course, the first thought that goes through his head is it Alfred? It's not. Sadly, it is another human being, and it's just the zoo guard. And right at that moment, of course, the hyenas start to attack. And they bite into, you know, Damien's flesh. And, of course, they are sprayed with, of course, a variant of the Joker venom. And he kind of falls into this kind of, you know, this avian area. And, of course, is brought back to a horrific present once he kind of wakes up from that by the Joker, who not only are there is he kind of covered with insects and flies and everything like that, and maggots and just all sorts of creepy crawlies, but even to make it more terrifying, he is wearing his face upside down. And so you can see, you know, just his, you know, his eyes and the muscles behind his open mouth, and you know, you see, you know, his two eye holes have his mouth. I mean, it's just, it is so unfucking believably creepy. And he goes on about, you know, about the Robins, not only the Robins to Batman, but the Robins as a species. And you know, Damien, again, you know, speaking to his youth and to his, you know, to his upbringing, is not afraid of the Joker. And there's, you know, he still believes that he can get the upper hand on the Joker. But again, the Joker is always 10 steps ahead until he isn't, until he runs out of moves. And what we have here is that, you know, he plays a tape for, you know, he plays a tape of him splashing the ammonia on Alfred's eyes, and basically Robin says, "I'm going to break a solemn promise, and I'm going to kill you." And this is something that the Joker kind of appreciates, because he knows this is a much darker version of Robin that he's ever seen before, he's ever come across before, but he's still a Robin. And, you know, the Robins, as well as all the other members of the Bat family, all they help to do is to hold Batman back. Why? And as, you know, Damien is kind of thrown into this, you know, he's kind of hung upside down, and the Joker drops, like, you know, just like 100 pounds of just, you know, grubs and worms and maggots and just everything that, you know, a real live Robin would eat. And, you know, he sees the Robins as Batman's weakness, as all the other members of the Bat family. He knows that Batman cares about the Robins, and that, you know, he even, you know, is talking about that you are a shadow to the brilliance of the Bat, to the great light that is Batman, to the Joker in his mind, in his warped reality. And, you know, the more that you're there, you're keeping him from being his true self. you know, if there is a you know, as long as there's a Robin in Batman's life, he can never truly be Batman, because, as Joker says, every Robin's greatest fear is getting Batman killed, and Batman's greatest fear is getting Robin killed. So yes, I mean, there is, you know, so I mean, there's always this logic behind all of Joker's insanity, and there is a truth to that. That yes, Batman's greatest fear is not that he'll, you know, is that when he does take on a partner, that somehow that partner is going to die and it will be his fault. And the Robins, because Batman had become such a father figure to them, their fear is that Batman will die because it's because of something that they do, wrong. But Batman, or Damian is a much different sort of animal. He is kind of self-reliant enough, but just, he's still just a kid. And what do we have emerging from this giant pile of, all of these disgusting insects? But we have this kind of Jokerized Batman, who he is planning on forcing Damian to fight to the death. Of course, Joker knows that, this will win. Now, the only thing that one can safely assume is that this is not really Batman. That this is someone that he's just dressed, some strongman that he's just dressed up as Batman, and, has, kind of given him the white face and the, and the smiling face and everything like that. And, but specifically calls him father figure. And that's a pretty telling clue that I'll get more into later, or in just a very short while. But I mean, this whole book, I was literally like, my skin was crawling. I felt very afraid. I felt incredibly uncomfortable, but it was the good kind of uncomfortable, disturbing that a Joker story should be. I mean, just the visual. I mean, because there are things in this book that you can never unsee. It's, it is, kind of like, the last issue of Spider-Man, seeing Aunt May, that's something you can never unsee. And there are things in this issue that you can never unsee. I mean, that visage of Joker wearing his own face upside down is something that was so incredibly fucking disturbing. And it was just like, I mean, I was like sweating when I was reading this book. I mean, it was just like, oh my god, what the fuck is going to happen here? Because this is, we've seen Joker crazy, but there's so much purpose to his insanity right now and to his plans that no one seems safe. And that's where Death of the Family is really working so well. But this issue, again, just helps to illustrate how well that can work. Now, I'm not reading any of the other, I'm not reading Detective, I'm not reading Suicide Squad, I'm not reading Red Hood and the Outlaws, because I just don't give a shit about those books, because I don't like any of them. Even though I know that John Layman took over Detective Comics, but I still don't care. Because, Batman essentially has his own solo book. And that ultimately brings us, so again, an absolute 5 out of 5 for Batman and Robin number 15, which of course leads us to our very pick of the week, which after, a third or fourth, I think was my fourth read of this, as I kind of read both of these issues kind of back to back, I really had to go with Batman number 15. I had to go with Snyder and Capullo, and and of course Snyder and also James Tynion and Jock. Wow, I mean, the thing that I can say about this book is that the first and the last pages of the Snyder Capullo story are perfect bookends. Because we have just this horrifying visage of the Joker, you know, his face strapped on, everything like that, and we have, you know, just in darkness, and then we have this inner monologue from Batman just saying, you know, try, you know, because again, world's greatest detective, you know, this is, you know, you have to understand that this is, you know, he's saying to himself, you have to understand that this is still just a man. But when you know, even when you look into those eyes and you see nothing, you see, you know, every human eye has these variations of different things that they will do when they are thinking or feeling certain things. You know, pupils will dilate, that, you know, they'll move to one side or the other, whatever, you know, the whole kind of lie to me, you know, kind of concept, that kind of pseudoscience. But, you know, this is something that I think obviously works for Batman because he's Batman. And so we have in this moment here that, you know, he sees that the Joker's pupils, his eyes, never give anything really away. And then we get through, you know, Harvey Bullock comes out with some, you know, with some other cops to, you know, of course, Batman is still all bound by, you know, all the, you know, chattering teeth cables and everything like that. But of course, you know, Bullock comes by and, you know, they're ready to take out the Joker, but of course he's got his own people surrounding the place, and he is, you know, giving him, you know, and he's, you know, they're shooting rocket launchers and everything like that. And, you know, of course, there's this great moment where Batman just, you know, gets free of that, and he just, you know, and there's a, you know, there's this wall of flame separating him and the Joker, and of course you see Batman rise, you know, in this great Capullo moment where he's rising through the flame, and he's just, you know, he starts to pound on the Joker, and of course he's been kissed by the Joker, to use the Joker's own parlance, with the Joker toxin. But of course not enough to kill, but only enough to kind of temporarily paralyze. And, you know, this is how the Joker makes his getaway good. And, you know, he's able to, you know, dive off into the reservoir, and he, of course, has his own capsule that he, you know, uses to get through the tunnels and make a clean getaway. We only find out about this after there's this moment where, you know, Bruce is surrounded by the members of the Bat family. You know, there's Dick, there's Damian, there's Jason, there's Babs. And everything seems to be working itself out. Everything seems great, right? Of course, you know, Alfred walks in and he looks at Alfred, and of course Alfred, of course, is wearing the Joker mask, and of course he's got a fucking axe, and, you know, he's about ready to, and then of course, you know, it's all a dream. Batman, you know, Bruce wakes up, he's in the cave, and he's surrounded by all of those same people, by Jason, by, you know, by you know, by all the members of the Bat family, and they all have, well, except, you know, except for quote unquote Red Robin. I don't recall him being there. But to be honest, it's almost kind of verboten at this point in time, because, you know, we know that he was never really a Robin, so I mean he can't really be considered part of the Bat family, even though obviously he was in the first, you know, in the first issue of this very run of Batman of Snyder and Capullo's. But anyway, so this all comes, this whole conversation kind of comes to a head as to, there is a secret that Bruce has not told anyone, but he doesn't believe that it has any real meaning to what's going on here because it's impossible. And basically that, going back to, again, the early days, many, many decades ago, in as far as the comics are concerned, but, you know, they're, you know, basically, you know, Joker has a blimp. He's going to, again, he's going to dump, his toxin all over Gotham City and kill everybody. But Batman is there to stop him, and there's some... What was really spectacular about this particular sequence is the fact that it's all actually, this whole flashback is told in like these sepia tones. Like, there's, this extra bit of coloring that Jonathan Glapion added on to, to give it kind of this... The word that I'm looking for is not Instagram, but to give it kind of this very kind of, this is very past. We know that we're in the past, and it's done subtly, but it's done nicely enough so that it does give us a sense of distance. And that when the Joker kind of plummeted from the blimp into the harbor, Batman got in the Batboat, kind of looked around for the Joker for a while, couldn't find him, assumed he was dead, and took off. But when he gets back, there is a Joker card that is attached itself to the Batboat. How is that possible? And he's got a host of theories as to how this could possibly be, and everybody's asking, well, how do you know that he didn't get in the cave? And Batman goes on to explain, look, I was going 50 miles an hour. I couldn't hold on at that speed. It would be impossible. But Dick says, hey, nothing that the Joker does seems to be impossible lately, because he seems to be doing everything impossible. Nothing that we thought that he could be even capable of doing, he's doing now. And, this is very upsetting, that, this news that potentially he does know their secret identities. As he explained in the previous issue, and how, Batman was going to kill them all. Now, that was what I'm seeing here here is not a literal death, but a kind of separation of the group, a discord within the group of the Bat family forces it to kind of break apart. And that's ultimately where we have kind of our, kind of the head that it comes to, despite, Bruce's insistence that there's no way that Batman or that Joker could have possibly hung on long enough and found the right house that even would have led to, it would be impossible for Joker to do this. But again, Dick makes a pretty strong argument that he's been doing a lot of impossible shit lately. And so again, this sows the seeds of not distrust, but I guess, yeah, it really is distrust, because this is something that they felt that they were entitled to know. And basically, Batman just basically tells them, look, I'm done with this conversation. I have other things to do. And he's trying to drive a wedge between us. But Batman doesn't also realize that he's also doing it as well. Whether he's doing it on purpose or whether he's doing it by accident, we don't, we feel that some of it is on purpose, but I think that even deeper than that, he is actually creating a bigger separation between him and the rest of his extended and, of course, his actual family. And so he then, using his detective skills, he tracks down one of the thugs that were, launching and shooting and stuff like that at the reservoir, and of course it happens to be an Arkham guard. And so we have, again, more of an inside track as to how, Joker ends up kind of getting out, is that, Joker was essentially, he was targeting this guard's family, which is why he had to do that. And so this has to bring Batman back to the place that naturally this has to come to a head, which is to Arkham Asylum. And in this last page, we get this astonishingly brilliant moment of realization for Batman, which is as he's walking up the steps. There's just these 4 frames of him going further and further up and into Arkham Asylum by the final frame. And again, we see his internal monologue. And, you know, he starts talking more about, you know, that he's just a man of flesh and blood that, you know, was dumped into a vat of, you know, of chemicals, and this is how he turned out. You know, that he's not superpowered, that he can't do the impossible. But the eyes, he was lying to himself before about his eyes, is that when he looked into the Joker's eyes earlier, or maybe I should say maybe this was possibly after the first moments of when he's watching the Joker in those eyes, we have this moment where he sees that for the one moment that I see the Joker's eyes reflect any kind of emotion, the emotion that I saw was love. And that was just, again, it was like, you know, a shudder has to run down your spine at Batman realizing that Joker he needs Batman, and that they will always have this dichotomous relationship. They will always be kind of, you know, I've always found that the yin to Batman's yang was Ra's al Ghul, because Ra's, you know, he seems to be basically what Batman could be if he were, you know, kind of, you know, a super terrorist. But, you know, that they've always found something of a kindred spirit within each other. But what it really boils down to is that ultimately, yes, the Joker is truly the chaos to Batman's order. And that is what makes him the greatest villain of all time in comic books, one of the greatest of all time in all of entertainment. And what makes him so significant specifically to Batman is that he will always be there to love Batman, despite, you know, anybody might leave him, and the Joker will have his own twisted sense of love, but he will never be able to kill Batman, just as he knows that Batman will never be able to kill him. Not for a lack of desire, but for his sense of justice. Then we're treated to the Snyder, Tinian, and Jock story, in which we have another member of Batman's Rogues Gallery, and this time it's the Riddler. And we see what Joker has been doing in Arkham all this time, and, you know, he's making it a place where he can have kind of this grand finale for Batman, because one can only assume that he's holding Alfred there. And whose cell does he come across? But of course, that would have Edward Nygma, the Joker. And of all of the characters that we've met in these B stories, Riddler seems to be the one that the Joker kind of respects the most of all of them, because he sees that the one thing that the Riddler does for him is he exercises Batman's greatest weapon, which is his brain. And, you know, the Riddler could easily be, you know, almost a Batman-esque kind of, you know, again, kind of super criminal, with the exception, of course, of the, you know, the physicality of it. But just mentally, he's on the same level as Batman, but he always has this this self-important need to leave clues. So that is, that he is, Joker very much regards the Riddler in very high esteem, because that is the one thing that the Riddler has always been able to do, is he's been able to outsmart the Batman to a certain extent, but really makes him work for it. Excuse me. So, I mean, and we have, some terrifically creepy, dark, brooding art by Jock. The scenes themselves, because basically what we have here is that, the Riddler's locked away, but the Joker knows that he can get out. He knows that he can get out at any time. He is smart enough to do that. But Riddler's like, hey, I don't necessarily want really much of a part of what you have planned. And so Joker gives him a little bit of incentive to get out of his cell, and is by dropping an older kind of Joker Venom bomb in there, and basically after a few minutes it will eventually kill him. So he will be forced to get out, to make his way out. And of course he does, and he even says something to the effect after he gets out that there were like 40 possible ways that he could have gotten out of the cell at any time. So this is where, this is why Joker seems to respect Batman so much. So, I mean, we know that, this is building towards something, a grand finale of Batman versus this rogues gallery that, Joker has kind of been recruiting along the way in these B stories at the end. And this was just about as good as everything that came before it. So, I mean, it was just really with a couple with really only one thing that I had a problem with. There were some moments where I felt that Capullo's art was a little too messy. And that's very rare for Capullo. I feel that obviously they're under a lot of pressure, under some big deadlines to meet. And, I mean, almost every single panel looks excellent. But there's this one panel, it's actually the panel of when Bruce is having his dream, and all of his, all of the family, the Bat family, is standing there kind of in their civilian guises. And there's just a look that a couple of them have on their face, which just looks like, it just looks really weird. I mean, their faces just look off. Which is why I say that, Gleason, that is the one thing that he got right in this particular round of Bat family comics, is that this was absolutely, he, as far as art-wise, that was a better book than this book. But like I said, despite that, I mean, this is still an unfucking believable read. I mean, Snyder just keeps not necessarily topping himself, but he never gets lower. It's like he's never taking a break from making this book the best that it can possibly be. So, I mean, it absolutely 5 out of 5. This is a perfect book for the Batman, for Joker, and for everything else that's going on in this world. However, if you see some of the clues that are in these other Bat books, like Batman and Robin, the reference to the father figure when he faces Batman, now that it could either be a more literal interpretation of it, because either A, Joker does know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, knows that Damian Wayne is his son, and that whoever he's bringing out to fight him is not Bruce Wayne, or not the Batman, but is Bruce, but is somebody else, just in that costume. So that could be a literal interpretation that this is just, that he does indeed know, and this is literally just a father figure. Or that if it is indeed Batman, then it's a obviously more figurative idea that it is, that the Robins look to Batman as a father figure. And even, you know, in Batgirl, there's no indication that Joker knows that Barbara Gordon is Batgirl, despite the fact that he's, you know, kidnapped her, her mother. So I mean, the argument of, you know, does the Joker really know, does leave a lot open to interpretation, which is one of the things that compels this mystery even further, is that even the tie-in books are realizing that, yes, there is something at work here, and it is something that revolves all around the one Batman title. So, I mean, it's really the sensibilities of this whole this whole crossover are, for the books that I've been reading anyway, are right on the money. They're just great. And god damn it, I knew that this was going to end up running longer than I had planned, even though but I mean, when I was talking about these great books, I mean, there's so much great about them that you need to talk about. So that's where I'm going to leave it for this week's New Comics, bitches! So, of course, if this is your first time here, please subscribe wherever the button is now. Here, there, somewhere. You know, of course, you know, thumb it up, thumb it down, comment, critique, criticize, complain. Let me know what you're thinking. Obviously, back and forth is what we want here in the community. I can't stress that enough. Commentary, that's what we need. You know, because that's how we all become friends. So just remember, contest is still going. Go back to the 2nd anniversary vlog and read that, you know, and watch that, and try and guess. And if you guess it right, like I said, if you're in the continental U.S., you get an Avengers figure. So that's it for this week's New Comics, bitches. So thank you again so much for watching. Those, you know, again, all of you who watched the anniversary video, thank you. Everything that you've done to make me feel welcome here. Again, I really appreciate it. I wish that I could get the level of views and subscribers that someone like, I don't know, Ghost Critic has, or somebody like that. But I'm just kidding. No, I'm happy to have the views that I'm getting on these really long videos. So, and or listens that I'm getting on iTunes, depending upon how many people are out there actually downloading this shit. So I haven't looked at the stats for this week yet, so maybe I'll do that. But I'm not going to get, you know, you can go back through the videos and you can find the link yourself. So, but this is me, James Donnelly, saying a very good night to you all. Read Batman. read the Bat books that I've been talking about, and you know, avoid Amazing Spider-Man 699.1 like the fucking plague. Okay, if there's anything to be taken away from this, it's that. So thank you again for watching. This is James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery, signing off, bidding you a very good evening, and reminding you, as always, to stay in the shadow.